Well, we've had a whole lot of people asking for some time now to catch up on the work on the outdoor railroad.
Right.
And a lot of this work was done just before the snow started to fall, and in fact just after the snow started to fall, to try to get everything ready for winter. And we've been posting things on the community tab, but we've been promising to put up a video, so here we are. Now, when last we spoke, we were working on the portal here between the inside and the outside part of the garage. And the very first thing we need to build here is the wood part of the outside portal, because everything else kind of builds off of that. The workflow dictates that that's got to be built first before we can really build anything else out here. And part of the portal is this openable door. It's actually a dog door.
Isn't that crafty?
we went over to PetSmart and couldn't find the exact right thing, so we found it online. Amazon, the world's widest selection of things. Now, we did show before building the benchwork out here, the framework, which is covered over with roofing material. And so everything else out here is building on top of that. Now, we're trying something a little bit different here. We're using this extruded styrene foam insulation, pink foam people tend to call it. And people are using that to build their indoor railroads, and I've been thinking, well, why couldn't that work out here?
It should. They use it as part of stucco on houses, so I don't know why not.
I don't see why not.
I think it'd work, yeah.
The plan was, well, we're just going to try it and see what happens. And so we layered mortar mix over the top of that, and it seemed like it was going to work, and then, well, frankly, it failed.
Right, we had a problem.
It all fell apart. And we had to figure out exactly what went wrong, and a couple of things went wrong, but the number one thing that went wrong here is I had an old bag of mortar mix that had been knocking around for several years, and I'd been saving it for just this project, and as it turns out, this stuff has a shelf life.
Yeah, it sure does.
And it fell apart. We've also had to come up with some techniques for coloring it, because we don't want it just cement gray. But these will all be subjects for future shows.
Right.
This week we just want to stay focused on building that wood section of the tunnel portal. But I'd just sort of like to entice everyone with how it turned out. This is actually from just a few days ago in the middle of winter between snowstorms.
Right.
Because we're still continuing to work out here in spite of the inclement weather.
Right. So this was this morning, and then we have the afternoon.
Indeed. You just never know. We're having actually one of our worst winters.
Right.
At least worst winter in a while.
Right.
But the good news is it's really putting the construction out here to a good test. If something's going to go wrong, it's going to go wrong this winter.
Either that or it's a model for the Sierra Nevadas.
Well, that too. And I've actually been envisioning running out here. We ran out here a couple of winters ago, and that worked out rather well. But this winter just isn't really lending itself very well to that.
No, for starters, it's cold out there.
It's cold, and then everything's freezing solid.
Right.
So we haven't actually been doing any running out here. But like I say, it's giving us a great opportunity to test all of this and see how it's going to weather. Okay, so let's fall back to fall now.
Right.
And the beginning of the project out here of building the mountain, as I say, the wood tunnel portal needed to be constructed first before any of this other work could be done. And before the wood tunnel portal could be constructed, the dog door needed to be installed.
Oh, for sure.
And once I was on a roll, I felt like, well, let's do the inside tunnel portal as well.
Right.
And because it kind of all functions together, because it's a two-sided door here for insulation purposes. And so I kind of wanted to make sure all that was going to work with the inside portal as well.
Right.
So here's the dog door as delivered by Amazon, a pet-safe dog door we're of course throwing away the little flapper part of it. What we're after is the little slider part that goes down in there to keep the dog trapped inside the house when you want to trap the dog inside the house.
Or trap the squirrel outside of the train portal.
That's exactly what this is supposed to do. It's the big thing to keep out are the squirrels.
Exactly.
Now the door itself is somewhat taller than the opening, but it needed to be that because I have to cut the bottom of it off because it needs to go down over the tracks.
Right.
And so I need to trim somewhere around 1 inch off of the bottom of this thing so that the whole thing will fit down over the tracks. So I've marked out my cuts here, and then I'm going to use this magnificent invention called a hacksaw.
Right.
It's not very high tech, but it works.
But don't throw anything away because I see some possibilities there.
Oh, we never throw anything away because you can turn scraps into the most interesting projects.
That's right.
So here's how the dog door fits over the tunnel portal. It's taller than it needs to be, but that's just fine because the wood part of the portal is also taller as an actual tunnel portal tends to be. So the first thing I constructed is the frame that's going to hold all of this, and I've attached that to the cinder block, to the masonry, with masonry screws. And then the dog door attaches to the frame with these supplied screws that came with the dog door, and there it is.
Oh, cool.
And slide the door down in there, and amazingly enough, it works just fine.
Right.
Now from the inside, we can see that it doesn't sit quite tight down there. It's not going to keep spiders out, but it will keep squirrels out.
Right, and I see a place to put a no trespassing sign.
Good call. But there is a plug of that extruded styrene that goes in here, which will keep the bugs out and form an insulated doorway. And that's why I needed to build the inside portal as well, so that I could fit all of that together.
Right.
Okay, next up was lining the inside of the masonry part with a thin plywood, because we don't want to just have the exposed cinder block in there.
No, that will attract spiders.
That will attract spiders. And then I attached some chunks of the insulation, the extruded styrene foam, which I carved with a Sureform tool to form chunks to make it look like a tunnel that's been blasted through solid rock.
Right.
We're familiar with tunnels that have been blasted through, but we've walked through some.
We have walked through one, especially.
That being the Donner Summit tunnel. Tunnel at, oddly enough, Donner Summit. And we will walk that again. But next time, let's bring better shoes.
Oh, for sure.
Or for shoe.
For sure. And a light.
A light would be good too, because it's dark in there. Okay, this is a fun product. It's called Cinefoil, and we have used this in the movie industry forever and ever, and you're supposed to use it for light control because it won't melt. You can kind of wrap it around your movie lights and shape the beam and form shadows and do all kinds of things with it. We just got this again from Amazon, but it's a heavy aluminum foil, but look how heavy it is. It really wants to stay in the shape that you form it, and it's got a black finish on it. So it actually works really well for making tunnel liners in all scales. I've used this in HOO everything.
Wow.
I've always made my tunnel liners out of this stuff.
That's cool.
And you can kind of see why.
Exactly.
Now, when working in the smaller scales, I've been able to form this all around in just one big piece. But when I tried that on this tunnel portal, it's just too big and awkward and cumbersome. So I decided that I would have to piece it together and then try to disguise the seams.
Right.
And that actually turned out to be pretty darn easy to do.
Yeah, I thought it looked good.
Yeah, and I attached this on here with our old standby product, that Fast Cap double stick tape.
Isn't that wonderful?
We use it for everything.
Oh, I know.
The contact information is right there on frame. It's called Speed Tape, Fast Cap tape, and you can get it on Amazon.
Emphasis on contact, yes.
Absolutely. So working from both inside and outside, I just kept wrapping this material around the extruded styrene foam with the double stick tape on there and shaping it and reshaping it to form what appeared to be sort of rock face, and there it is.
Oh, that is cool.
Isn't that neat? I'm still missing a little section over there on the left. And what I found is I had to add a little bit more foam up in there to make it work exactly the way I wanted.
Oh, but check it out.
And then notice that it doesn't extend all the way to the sheetrock because that's where the inside door goes.
Right.
Up into that area where you see the fiberglass insulation.
That's
that
in the
itchy
wall.
stuff.
Yeah.
Then, of course, anytime you achieve something really neat, you have to wait for the sun to go down and then run trains.
Isn't that neat? It looks real.
And in the fall, you can actually do that. But look how fun it is from outside.
Yes.
With the light coming from. I just love everything about the tunnel portal so far.
Right.
I think that stonework just looks great.
Oh, it's wonderful.
And then because some parts of the dog door framework will show around the tunnel portal, I came in here with some black paint and just painted all of that black. So in the areas where you do see it, you don't see it.
Right, it looks just like a beam or something.
It looks, yeah, like something that belongs.
Right.
And then I had to double check the fit on the doggy door to make sure the paint wasn't interfering with that.
Right.
And it's not.
Good deal.
Working just fine.
That's perfect.
Okay, here's my inspiration for the outside part of the portal. This is a Campbell tunnel portal left over from my old HO railroad. And I've saved it because it's really neat. And then this is a covered bridge that our friend Al built.
Right.
And that was sort of my inspiration for the inside tunnel portal.
Right.
Makes the inside tunnel portal look more like a covered bridge, but darn it, I like the look. So I'm cheating.
Well, it might have looked that way.
Yeah, it's model railroading. You can do whatever you want.
That's right.
So next up is the actual framework that the tunnel portal will be built out of. I'm using pressure-treated plywood and grabber screws. And then this whole thing is designed to fit right on top of the dog door. And ultimately, it will be attached using a little bit of glue because I may someday need to pry it loose. But it fits neatly right up against the dog door and then leaving just this little strip of channel here that the slide goes down into for the dog door so that that's not encumbered in any way.
Right.
Then there's an opening on the top because if there isn't, how would I ever get the little slider out of there? And unless you're standing on a ladder, you'll never know that there's a hole in the top of this thing where you can reach down in there and pull the slider out.
Right.
Now, our table saw is a rather basic unit, and it sits on a table, and I can only use it in the summer because it has to sit out in the yard. But anyway, I fired this up, and then using some very old fence slats that have been out here in the yard, weathering.
Quite naturally.
There's cedar slats, so they should work fine for this, but I cut them up into the appropriate shapes to build the tunnel portal out of. And there they are.
Nice.
And they're already weathered.
Isn't that cool?
They've got about 5 years worth of weathering on them already.
That's right.
And they should continue to weather in place, so even better. Now those pieces will layer on top of this framework that I've built, and I'm going to secure them on there using Gorilla Glue.
Oh, gee.
Anyway, first thing is to cut the strips into the proper little short lengths that will fit that framework, and then just start attaching those to the framework. Again, I'm using this product Gorilla Wood Glue Ultimate, and they say it's absolutely weatherproof. Not weather resistant, but absolutely waterproof. They make a lot of different Gorilla Glues, but Wood Glue Ultimate is supposed to be completely waterproof. And then using that particular glue, I'm simply securing all of my wood strips in place. And then I want to make sure that all of these wood strips are properly clamped a proper glue joint with these wood glues is only going to be as strong as the clamping that you provide. You really need to have a lot of pressure on the glue joint while you're making it. Otherwise, the glue will be very weak and it'll tend to just fall apart.
Right.
And we actually have a pretty good selection of clamps around the shop. We just ran down to Harbor Freight
Oh, yes.
years ago and said, let's just grab a handful of everything.
Right, and I'm glad we did. They have paid for themselves I don't know how many times.
Man, we're always in the clamp drawer looking for some particular wood clamp or spring clamp or some kind of clamp. We use these things more than any other tool in the shop.
That's right.
Anyway, there it is. You can see how it's starting to go together. Some of the trick here is figuring out exactly how to clamp it and which clamps to use, especially for these little angled pieces here.
Oh, yes.
That turned out to be a little bit of a project, figuring out how to put a clamp on there at an angle to hold the angle pieces in place while the glue dries.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a bit tricky, but it worked out okay.
Right, we didn't have to leave you there overnight.
Yeah, because I could have just pinched it as hard as I possibly can.
Yeah. See you in the morning. Bye.
See you in the morning. You know, and as hobbyists, don't we tend to do that? I'll just hold this in place till the glue's dry, and then you say, am I nuts? And then the answer comes to you, yes. Now, as everyone knows, I always like to take a human figure and put it in place just to get a sense of the scale, and suddenly you become aware of just how big a tunnel portal really is.
Oh, yes, and then if you walk through one, you become aware how big it is.
Yeah, you walk into a tunnel and it's like, good grief, this is like a cathedral in here.
Right.
And the size of these beams that hold the whole thing together are just gigantic. And as we're working on this, you tend to lose track of scale, and then you become aware of just how tall this thing is.
Yes, it would be massive.
It would be massive indeed. And here it is with the HO version. You can see that there's a little bit of difference in scale.
Yes.
Now also notice that the angle braces are only present on one side, because on this tunnel portal, the mine is on the other side, and it's a sheer drop off by 50 feet to the tracks below. So there's no place there to have the angle braces on the right hand side of the portal, only on the left hand side.
Right.
And then, of course, I had to pull the slide up out of there to make sure that I could still get a hold of it with the tunnel portal in place.
Right.
And mostly I needed to ensure myself that it just looks completely cool.
Right.
Now, there's another diabolical thing going on here with this framework. I've designed it in such a way that it keys into the foam when I cut the foam for strength.
Right.
So all of these foam pieces that I cut, which will be next week's show, is cutting out the foam and putting that in place and gluing it in place, and then, oh my gosh, layering it over with mortar mix without it falling apart.
Right.
Well, hopefully. Anyway, there it is. That's what it's going to look like once we start putting some mortar mix on there.
Right.
So you do want to join us next week for the trials and tribulations of working with mortar mix.
Oh my.
And I do mean tribulations and trials.
Right.
Trial and error and error and error. Anyway, that will be next week's show. So if you're not a subscriber to the channel, do become a subscriber to the channel. And the easy way to become a subscriber is by clicking on the blue button. Zoink! Right there, the blue button. Well, we're not sure how you found this video on the internet. We hope you didn't find it boring, and we will see you here next week as we work with some mortar mix.
Oh, yay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.